I read a book called The Case Against Reality by Donald Hoffman. Donald Hoffman is a scientist with many years of training and a PhD, background in physics and evolutionary biology. In this book, he presents a theory called the fitness before truth theory. The book ties together ideas from evolutionary biology with physics, specifically the kind of mystical, mysterious nature of quantum physics, and how physical reality works very differently on the quantum level compared to Newtonian physical reality that we are used to. And I wasn't convinced by the book in the beginning until I got to chapter 5 or 6 out of the 10 total chapters. And by that point, the way the argument was laid out, it kind of convinced me. Now, as I sit right here having finished the book, I'm not going to tell you, oh, reality for sure does not exist, because, we don't know either way, including the author. He states, from a scientific perspective, one can never know something for sure. We can just kind of always chip away and get to a little bit more, closer to the truth, whatever scientific truth actually is. And that really struck me throughout this book. What really struck me was the fact that he is trying to outline where consciousness comes from, and if the world that we see in front of us as living, breathing human beings, each one of us, is it really real, or are we being fed something in our minds kind of collectively that we've agreed upon as being the truth, but is in fact not real in a scientific sense? So he goes into, is space-time real? Because time certainly feels real. We all, as biological creatures, time passes, things change with our bodies, our minds, generations come and go. The passage of time we cannot control, but we experience it. And space itself is closely tied with time. Light travels at the speed of light, and nothing can go faster than that. So things get real weird when you get to the speed of light, because a particle or something traveling at the speed of light, it seems as if everything around that time stops for them, and they just move forward. And for the rest of us observing that thing, it looks like it's going instantaneously from one side of the galaxy to the other, or at least as fast as, the speed of light. And so time dilation occurs, and a lot of weird things happen. So that's why space and time are closely connected. But let's back up a little bit before, the initial chapters. He introduces the topic and says, I'm going to make a case against reality. I think what we experience day to day, what's happening in front of us, is as if it's like on a desktop. You can manipulate icons, you can click on them, you can put them in the recycling bin and get rid of files. What you're seeing is just an interface. It's not reality. The reality of the computer is happening in the microchips, in the circuitry, in the motherboard, and it's not displayed on a desktop. But the desktop is a useful fiction, and so you, as the user, can tell the computer what you want it to do, but in reality, the underworking is a separate thing, and that goes unseen. So he's making the proposition that reality as is a useful fiction. He calls this the fitness before truth theory. And from evolutionary biology, fitness payoffs are those things that if you as an organism propagate your genes to the next generation, that's considered a fit individual. You have displayed fitness. If the organism gets killed before it propagates its genes, that's considered an insult or an injury. I think it's one of those two terms. And that refers to, like if you get, if a tree falls over and kills you, then you don't have any children and no family, then that's not a very fit payoff. And so I hope that concept makes sense. And Hoffman argues that everything we see in front of us, it has a fitness payoff, and it's us as human beings, as evolved creatures, all we're seeing is like reality in front of us is like a desktop interface. It's not reality. And he goes into like, where does consciousness come from? Because this is the hard problem of consciousness. We, to this day, even with all our scientific instruments and electrocardiogram, they can hook your brain up and scan it, and they can see where the neurons are lighting up, and then a thought comes by. But we to this day don't know where the thought comes from. So if you start to think about the qualia of something, and I read a book a long time ago called the Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance. I believe the book is from the 80s. And the author talks about qualia a lot. Qualia is like the taste of strawberries or the smell of coffee. It's an experience that you, it's just, it seems to be a fact of consciousness that we can have this experience and we can't really communicate it. It just sort of is the qualia of that experience. We don't know where that originates from. Like, where do your thoughts come from? We can scan your brain and tell you, okay, this person is experiencing happiness, or this person's playing the violin, or this person is meditating, and we can see different parts of the brain light up. But he makes the analogy of, just because a lot of people gather at a train station, they don't cause the train to show up. In the same way that neurons fire and light up, but we don't know what caused the train to come to the station. The people didn't summon it. The neurons don't summon all these thoughts. And that is the hard problem of consciousness. And so in this book, he tries to not necessarily solve the hard problem of consciousness, but to define the parameters of the thought experiment and how we can solve the quote-unquote hard problem of consciousness from a scientific perspective. So you can't prove that reality exists, but you can try to prove that consciousness comes from something. And he says that conscious agents are the only true thing that we can prove. A little bit of a Descartes, I think, therefore I am. So you can't prove anything in front of you. Like, your senses could be lying to you. So, we do have the scientific method. That is how we divine truth, or at least get close to it. But the only true thing is kind of our perceptions. And he spends a lot of time thinking about that. He views beauty in the eye of the beholder, and he goes into a lot of detail on why that's true, biologically speaking, that what we perceive to be beautiful is just is largely correlated with fitness payoffs. So, you tend to look at someone's eyes and you can divulge a lot of information about the other person, whether they're scared, they're happy, they're looking at you, they're looking away at something, and it kind of tells you as a human what to focus on. If you look at everyone else's eyes and they're all focused on one thing, then you should probably focus on that one thing. And then, even deeper into that, the oh, what's it called? It's not your irises. It's a part of, it's called the limbal ring. You guys should Google that phrase if you're curious about this. The limbal ring. It's the ring around, how sharp is it around the in between the white parts of your eyes and the darker parts of your eyes and like your pupil. If that's very sharp, it tends to be more attractive, and it's more sharp in younger people that tend to be females that can carry babies to term, and so it kind of designates youth, and it tends to be more attractive. So we can alter with biology and the way we look by doing different contact lenses that make your limbal ring look sharper and more defined. So I thought something like that was really interesting. He's kind of making the case that everything you see in front of you is either a tool, and this is a little bit like Carl Jung in a sense, like kind of archetypes. Everything you look at, you're not seeing what the thing is. You're seeing a tool that you can use to navigate the world. So when you see a chair, you're not looking at the chair or the components of the chair. You're looking at a thing that you could sit down and rest in, or you see tools as things that you can grab and manipulate the world around you to produce the kind of fitness benefits that you want to accomplish, and thereby propagate your species onto the next generations. And so if you look at everything, including just what you perceive to be reality, through this lens, you could start to make the case of what is it that we can actually prove. And that's when he gets into physics, gets into quantum physics, gets into this idea that space-time may not be real. And as proof of this, he does talk a little bit about the double slit experiment, that if you just have two slits and you shoot an electron through it, it looks like the electron could be in a superposition where it's traveling through both, neither or one of each of the slits all at the same time, and it creates a wave pattern on the other side. If you aren't familiar with this, you should Google it and find out about the double slit experiment for yourself. But if you put a scanner or an observer of some sort into that, and you closely watch both slits, the electron will travel through one or the other slit. It will not be in a superposition. So what does this tell us? This tells us that if you observe something, it follows regular physics, what I'm calling regular physics. If you do not observe something and just look at the results, it seems to be in a quantum superposition where it could have been A, B, C, or D. And so what this points to is that there is something about the observer, that the observer is the only real thing. And so this is where he ties together his understanding of evolutionary biology, that the only thing that we can truly know is what we're looking at provides fitness and gets us to our goals. You can't trust your senses as giving you truth. It's a very hard topic to understand. In fact, if you're interested in this all, I would recommend you read the book, because he makes the case better than I'm making it here.